Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and I'm taking a look at, this was round 5 from the National Open 2012 this summer, and I was playing with the black pieces against FM Nick Raptis. And so, kicking things off, Nick opened up with d4, and I had prepped the King's Indian defense for this tournament, so could have played d5 here, go into a Grunfeld, or c5 goes into a Benoni, but I just played castles. Very flexible. He plays e4, and d6. This is the King's Indian. Right? No confusion here. So bishop e2. This is essentially become the main line. There used to be a lot of different tries in the King's Indian. Sometimes people play g3. Every once in a while, h3. Bishop g5. I guess used to be pretty popular. I think the Averbach system. A lot of different stuff, but bishop e2 is very popular these days. And so e5 is also kind of the main line, theoretically. Castles. I do see h3, I guess, sometimes here, but again, I think castle's really the main line. So knight c6. And okay. After knight e1, I believe this is the Aronin-Taimanov system. And this is one of the main tries. You also see knight d2 a good bit. Not really people playing the bishop g5 stuff anymore these days. It's the knight move is in. It allows f3, and the knight can go towards the queenside or wherever from d3. So I play knight d7. I don't know. It's okay. I've seen knight d7 and knight e8 in quite a few games. Both have their trumps, I suppose you could say. The knight on d7 we're preventing c5. However, a lot of times you do want the knight on e8 so that you can achieve some kind of f5, usually rook f7, bishop f8, and the knight on e8, the point, what I'm getting at, is that the knight is protecting a common entry point for white on c7. Anyway, knight d7 is just fine. It prevents c5. Bishop e3, standard, f5. He could also... Yeah, this is fine. f3 is a move here. And so I just continue with f4. Bishop goes back. So we can see, okay, this bishop is chilling, it's hanging out, it's helping the queen side out. And for black, I think g5 is a very standard move here. He goes rook c1. Now here, I honestly, I don't really like the knight on d7. I would prefer the knight to be on e8. And so we're going to see why. So here I did something pretty weird. Rook f6. I think I confused an old plan. The knight being on d7 kind of threw me for a loop. I mixed up plans in opening. Sometimes the knight on d7 is better placed. But the thing, so here I just tried rook f6. I don't know. I was freestyling it here. This was the 5th round. I was having a pretty good tournament. I really wanted to win. So I was trying to come up with something fresh. Not a very good plan. I think this was proven a while ago. But the idea was that with the rook on f6, he goes knight d3, knight g6. So the idea was that now after c5, this was kind of the best I could think of. He could also have played b4. I thought b4 was a better try. But he tried c5. Now my idea, normally you're not going to be doing any exchanges. With the rook on f7, like a normal plan, you're not going to be doing the exchange on c5. You're probably going to play bishop f8. Anyway, here I just said, whatever. The knight's on d7. Let's just do the exchange and see what happens. So he takes. I need to take here before this knight comes into e6. And so h4 or h5. It's kind of like what else? What else you do for black? I mean, in principle, you don't want to move pawns on the queen side for black in this kind of position. Just like white doesn't want to move pawns on the king side. I'm attacking the king side. He's on the queen side. In the King's Indian defense, it could not be more clear cut. Right? So h5, the attack is... It's possible. This was really the only chance. I mean, playing moves like bishop d7, a6, b6 even. This is the opposite of what you want to do here for black. So h5, the only idea, really. He goes knight b5, and the idea is that after a6, first of all, I'm incurring some weakness by having to play a6, and he brings the knight to a3, where the knight, it's just one of those common moves. Also, I believe it was possible to maybe prep this all with queen c2 or queen to b3, and I was planning on going king h7, so another benefit of playing h5 earlier. Okay, so now knight h4. The knight, just hanging out. Maybe we want to sack this guy here later. We definitely want to clear some room for the rook to go to g6 and push open the g file. It's just that simple. A lot of times in this King's Indian stuff, it can be a little stressful just because it's such a clear cut. Both sides have their own plans. So bishop f2. I suppose he's getting ready to threaten this queen c2 move, and so I just play rook g6. If queen c2 now, I was either going to play knight takes g2, followed by g4, or just g4 directly, with the idea that if he takes, my queen runs up, and now there's some very nasty stuff threatened against white's king here. This is going to be a tough position for him. There's a lot of sacrifices in these lines. Sometimes you don't even have to sack. Bishop takes, pawn takes, whatever. But even still, there's a lot of sacks. So rook g6 was cool. I really didn't want to play moves like bishop f8. Let's just check this out. If you start defending, let's just see how quickly that momentum changed. Right, white just gets a lot of play here, and he's gonna get in at c7. So no dice. We don't want to defend here, not at all. So instead, just rook g6. Let's go forward. He plays h3. I think. I'm just starting to play g4. So h3. Queen d7. This was kind of a cool idea. I don't recall seeing this move in the preparation I did in this opening, and I think the idea is pretty cool because now instead of a very I was even looking at sacking two pieces at once here, a double piece sack, just to get rid of those pawns. And now g4, I don't see it. I don't see what this really does. And queen d7 check, he's going to chill. G4, this is all fun, and this was great, stacking two pieces for two pawns, but I believe white is going to be able to sack one back and defend. I guess this rook here, something. It's, let's just say white just sacks it back. Black's initiative has died. He's down a piece. Okay, so the double piece sack was a nice fantasy variation. It was, that's ridiculous. G4, I don't really know. It doesn't really seem practical. If he trades off his light square bishop, I'm losing all my attack. What happened? F3 doesn't really do anything. Bishop h6, trying to play f3 and open this guy's just too slow. So, it's really out of necessity I was able to find this move because queen d7, there's really nothing else. If black cannot play g4, which is blocked, if he can't sack the knight, if he can't sack the bishop, you got to bring something else into the attack, and so queen d7 was one way to do that. And now I've got a very clear threat. Let's just say if he goes queen c2, I'm sacking the knight. Finally. And this would appear to be winning for black. Pretty cool. So queen d7 was nice. I think he's got to take the knight. Because I think this bishop is in the way. His king can't run away. And rook e1, it's not really clearing any space either. So he takes the knight. I take. Nice double pawns. But an even nicer g-file to play with. And again, it's not easy, right? Even this, the c7 pawn, I don't really want to give this up. But if I got to give it up, then you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes you can even swing this bishop up to c5, which we'll see that idea a little bit later. So anyway, he takes and he makes a run for it. I can force a draw here by, I guess this pretty, if he runs all the way, this would appear to be a good idea. Not to mention the queen's going to get active as well. This, that's too crazy. You can force a draw for black. Now, just unfortunately, in this position, I got to this in my calculation. I realized there's nothing better than perpetual check. So I just was like, okay. By the way, at this point, I think Nick White was he was getting in some time trouble. and I was playing faster. It's only move 23. It was 2 hours for 40 moves, and then an hour of sudden death. This is only move 23, so I think he started getting low on time, like under 10 minutes here. So I was hoping to catch him. Black has a good position, but this is far from winning, as we're gonna see. So the best I can hope for here is just to increase the pressure. Really, now that these pawns are fixed, I'm gonna have to stack a piece to break through there, or I'm gonna have to play on the queen side, which I'm not crazy about. We'll see. He goes queen c2. This makes a lot of sense, right? Use, white's got the open c file. Still, I can force a draw with rook takes, but I saw a way to win his queen, and I just couldn't really find anything better, to be honest. So started with bishop d6. Also possible was rook g7, with the idea that if he brings his knight up, then I get active. All right, this bishop getting active, he does not want this guy on one of these diagonals doing work. So maybe a better try was rook g7 here, maintaining the option to move this bishop. I played bishop d6 with the idea that, so he can't play knight c4 because I get the check. He plays rook d1. I believe he's trying to do something like this. Also, it clears room for his king. Maybe now I can't quite force a draw with sacking the rook. So b6. This is a downside of queen d7. Maybe it's not as good of a move as I thought, because it's stunting the development on the queen side. Maybe here the best move, honestly, now that I'm looking at this again, was queen e7. With maybe dual threats going here and supporting the bishop on this diagonal with b6 to come. Queen e7 looks pretty cool. Also, maybe we're going to be able to sack some pieces to break in. Instead, b6, I don't know. This is not a very good move. Queen e7 or queen to g7, definitely better. No doubt about it. So here he goes queen c6, and this is the winning the queen. Bishop c5 check, so we'll discover check. He sacks exchange. I can't take here because he takes either rook. So now I take his queen, and rook takes. And queen g7, I don't know. Here he was low on time. He was like 4 minutes. I had like 20, maybe in an hour. I was moving pretty fast here. So queen e7, and after the game we talked for a second, and Nick said I should have played bishop f1, and he definitely should have. Bishop f1, I would probably have to go. Let's see, bishop here. There's no more piece stacks. There's no way to get in. And with the kingside closed, his possession of the c file, my weak pawn on e5, white might even be better here. I can play b5. I feel like black should be able to hold this with the queen, but this is not very fun. So queen g7, he played rook c1 immediately, and so here I had check and the bishop sack, the only option, right? So the game was quite interesting. I get 2 pawns for the piece. Honestly, the pawns don't matter. I just want to march one of these h pawns. Need counterplay. And so he gets quite some counterplay as well. So here, I guess he's got to move the king up anyway to try to control this h1 square. So he just went ahead and did it. Also, this limits my tactical possibilities involving queen g1 and queen e3. So h3, what else? And so I get the queen. Maybe he can play check here. But that's not going to work. d7, probably queen h4. And I'm going to sack one of these queens, and I'm going to queen the h-pawn. So, okay. That's not going to work. But just queen. This is what happened in the game. So he takes the extra queen and plays d7, and I'm saved by the last move I've got, rook d8. And fortunately, I saw queen h4 would maintain the rook here, and there's no quick way for him to get his knight to a square to attack d8. Right, so that's what saved my skin here. Bishop takes a6. Black has still got to be careful. Now he exchanges bishop b5, so the queen is tied down. Luckily, I've got another h-pawn to try to queen. So queen c7 first, but I can't rush it here because if he gets his knight to e5, where it can help out, with the promotion, I could lose. So I gotta be careful. So first, king e7, gotta play a little accurately. Go ahead and go, stop the pawn. He goes king d2. Maybe he could have tried b4. Seems like the pawn should be getting there. And maybe here I'm gonna go at the very last second, queen d8. Or let's say even queen b8, right, to keep an eye on e5. And now I should be able to get this queen over here just in time to promote and go for mate. Pretty crazy. So b4, I think, was his best chance, because once my queen got to c5, it was over. So here in the game, he played king e2, which, I don't blame him. Literally at this, well, I guess we had just reached the time control. He reached the time control with like 1 second on the clock. Kept thinking he was going to flag. It was crazy. So here, queen c5 to stop b4 and also to cut off his king. Makes sense. He goes a4, still trying to open it up. h4, and here he resigned. The reason is that if he plays b4, he can't take on e5 because I get this check where I'll be winning his knight. And if he takes here, I might even still have some checks to win that knight, right? Let's check this out, right? He goes here. If he goes after my pawn, I just don't think it's gonna work. I mean, I'll get a promote. The thing is, the knight is not able to help this pawn promote to d8. So this was completely psycho. The whole game, I was having to sack all these pieces. But this is like what life is like when you play the King's Indian. So on the one hand, I had a good record this summer using it, but all these games are just so stressful. I mean, you got to sack a piece, or you're going to lose on the spot, and it's a difficult opening to play, but it's definitely playable, as shown by Nakamura, Rajabov, I think Kramnik. A lot of people play it, so it's definitely playable, but at the very least, it's going to be exciting. So this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and thanks for tuning in.